Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin.
Far below the restless sway of the ocean, where sunlight dances only on the surface and storms rage unseen from the world above, there lies a silence so ancient it seems older than time itself. The surface waters breathe and shimmer like living glass, but deeper still, beyond the fall of light, the world grows quiet. The blue fades to black, and the black becomes a velvet weight pressing from every side. Here begins the long descent to the hidden heart of the earth, the place called the Mariana Trench, a scar in the seafloor deeper than the tallest mountains are high. It is a place where no waves break, no winds whisper, and no warmth dares to wander. As we drift down through the dimming layers, the water grows colder, and the pressure gathers like invisible hands. Every 10 meters, the weight above grows heavier, stacking more ocean on our shoulders. At first, there are still flickers of life, silverfish darting like quick ideas, jellyfish drifting like glass lanterns. But as the light fades, these wanderers vanish. We leave behind the sunlit epipelagic world, slipping quietly through the twilight zone where the last weak glow of day dissolves. The darkness is not empty. It is full of waiting, of memory, of time slowed to a near halt. It feels like falling into the pause between heartbeats. At around 1,000 meters, the world changes completely. This is the midnight zone, where light has no meaning and sound carries like ghostly whispers. The water is cold enough to still thought, barely above freezing, and the pressure is immense, over 100 times what we feel at the surface. Any air-filled space would be crushed here like paper, yet life endures, reshaped by this realm. Creatures glow from within, carrying their own lanterns, tiny beads of living light called bioluminescence. They blink slowly like fading stars, green and blue and ghostly white, a constellation scattered across the black. Some creatures dangle glowing lures to call prey from the dark. Others hide their shine until startled, bursting into sparks like underwater comets. These fragile gleams are the only echoes of starlight in this world that the sun forgot. Downward we drift past 5,000 meters, where even the faint glow of life grows sparse. The water presses with the weight of a skyscraper, and everything here must be soft or shatter. Most creatures are small, gelatinous, their bodies more water than flesh, their movements slow as dreams. They are not built to fight the pressure, but to flow with it. Here live the snailfish, pale and delicate, bones dissolved to gel, skin like translucent paper. Their hearts beat gently, patient in the stillness. Amphipods scuttle like tiny ghosts over the seafloor, their shells thin and flexible, bending to the deep. The silence thickens around them like a living thing, like an ocean within the ocean. As the trench walls rise around us like the edges of a great wound, the world grows stranger. The seafloor here is not smooth but fractured, folded by the slow collision of tectonic plates. The Mariana Trench marks the boundary where the vast content reference site, 0 index equals 0, dives beneath the content reference site, 1 index equals 1, sinking into the mantle over millions of years. It is a graveyard of ocean crust, dragged down and reborn in the Earth's molten heart. Every moment the planet's skin is being remade here, though the motion is slower than the growth of fingernails. The walls are steep, coated with fine gray silt, and the pressure is almost beyond imagining, over 1,000 atmospheres at the trench's deepest point, content reference site, 2 index equals 2. It is the lowest place on the surface of our planet, nearly 11 kilometers beneath the waves. No sunlight has ever touched these rocks. No wind has ever brushed this dust. The cold is absolute, the dark unbroken. Yet even here, life persists. In the cracks and folds of the seafloor, microbial mats cling to bare rock, feeding on minerals instead of light. They form delicate films like frost, invisible unless the beam of a deep-sea submersible finds them. These microbes are ancient, perhaps among the oldest kinds of life on Earth, kin to the first cells that learned to breathe chemical energy when the world was young. Around them drift the remains of the upper ocean, a slow snow of organic dust called marine snow falling endlessly from above. Tiny particles of dead plankton, fragments of scales, broken bits of life. It takes months, even years, for a single flake to fall from the surface to this abyss. When it arrives, it carries the memory of sunlight in its fragile shape. The trench is shaped not just by silence, but by weight and time. Rocks crack under stress, releasing faint tremors that ripple through the water like distant heartbeats. Sometimes earthquakes bloom silently here, the grinding of plates deep below. These quakes can send tsunamis racing across oceans, though the trench itself barely stirs. It has essayed countless storms, extinctions, and ice ages, yet remains unchanged, as if time itself flows slower in its cold veins. To linger here is to step outside the world of clocks, to feel the planet dreaming in its sleep. As we near the deepest layers, the world grows hushed beyond sound. Even the submersibles that have visited here seem out of place, like bright toys in a cathedral of stone. The first human to reach the bottom, content referensoe site, 3 index equals 3 in the bathyscaphe, content referensoe site, 4 index equals 4, described it as a bottomless silence, as if sound had been swallowed by the water. That silence is still here, undisturbed by the passing of decades. It is a silence made not of absence, but of fullness, a silence that holds everything, like the pause between breaths that keeps the world alive. In this stillness, even thought slows. The boundaries between things seem to blur. Water becomes stone, stone becomes night, and night becomes endless. It feels as though we are drifting not through space, but through memory. The trench is the earth remembering itself, holding all its history folded into darkness. Fossils lie buried in its walls, remnants of ancient seafloors that once basked in sunlit shallows. Minerals seep from the crushed crust, carrying whispers from the deep interior of the planet. Everything here is old beyond imagining, yet the trench is still being born, pulled downward grain by grain, always sinking, always beginning again. And then finally the descent slows. The walls give way to a flat plane of soft sediment, the very floor of content referensoe site, 5 index equals 5. It is utterly still. The water does not move. The silt lies like fine snow, unmarked by current or claw. If we were to rest here, our shadow would remain for centuries. Nothing comes here quickly. Time trickles like cold syrup. The pressure is 8 tons on every square inch, enough to crush steel. Yet even here, even at the absolute bottom, life has found a way. Strange single-celled organisms called foraminifera build delicate shells from the minerals around them, weaving homes as thin as thought. They wait patiently in the dark, eating the slow rain of marine snow, living at the edge of what life can endure. This is the silence beneath the world. It is not the silence of nothingness, but of everything held gently in place. It is the hush of weight, of patience, of a planet dreaming. Down here, the ocean does not roar or whisper, it simply is. And in its stillness, it holds the shape of the earth's first breath and its last. The silence of the trench is not an emptiness, but a fabric, a slow and delicate weaving of forces older than life itself. If you listen closely, not with your ears, but with the stillness inside you, you can almost feel the planet's bones shifting far below the silt. The trench lies where 2 immense plates of Earth's crust meet. The content referensoe site, 0 index equals 0, pushing west. The content referensoe site, 1 index equals 1, pressing east. Where they collide, the ocean floor folds like cloth, sliding one layer beneath the other in a movement called content referensoe site 2 index equals 2. This motion is invisible from above, yet it has shaped continents, raised mountain ranges, and carved out this abyss that drinks the ocean whole. Every year, the Pacific plate slips a few centimeters deeper, as if kneeling slowly into the dark. And with each silent inch, the trench deepens and the world is remade. These subduction zones are the hidden engines of the planet, recycling the crust back into molten mantle. As the plate sinks, it drags water down with it, trapped in the crystal cages of seafloor rocks. When those rocks are heated in the mantle's fiery grasp, they release their water like ancient tears. The water lowers the melting point of the mantle, letting new magma form. That magma eventually rises elsewhere on Earth, feeding volcanoes that ring the content reference site, 3 index equals 3, like a necklace of fire. So though the trench lies cold and silent, it is part of a vast heartbeat, a slow cycle of destruction and creation, burial and rebirth. The abyss is not only an end but a beginning, a place where the planet exhales and inhales across millions of years. Even the rocks here hold stories. They are scraps of ocean crust born at mid-ocean ridges, where molten rock once cooled into dark basalt under newborn seas. Over tens of millions of years, those basalt plains drifted across the ocean, collecting the quiet dust of plankton shells and cosmic grains. Now they are dragged down into the trench, cracked and folded like old letters being tucked away. Some pieces will be pulled so deep they melt, erasing their history to become magma once more. Others will remain as ghostly slabs far beneath the continents, silent witnesses to oceans long vanished. To touch one of these stones would be to hold a memory of the planet when it was young. Above these buried stones, the trench is also a trap for time. The marine snow that drifts endlessly downward carries the remains of countless lives. Every flake that lands on the trench floor adds a page to an invisible book. Layer upon layer, century after century, it builds a slow archive of the surface world. Tiny shells of content reference site, 4 index equals 4, delicate as glass, settle here like fallen stars. Radiolarians, microscopic architects of silica, join them, their skeletal forms as intricate as frost. Mixed among them are dust grains blown from distant deserts, ash from volcanoes half a world away, and even the faint traces of humanity, microplastics, soot, and the whisper of our passing. To study these sediments is to read the diary of the ocean, each layer a year, each grain a heartbeat. The pressure here is not only a force, it is a sculptor. Under 1,000 atmospheres, molecules themselves behave differently. Water becomes denser, more viscous, almost syrup-like in its patience. Chemical reactions slow to a crawl, yet life has shaped itself to endure. Deep-sea microbes carry special proteins called content reference site, 5 index equals 5, which protect their cells from being crushed. Their enzymes are built to fold correctly under pressure, where ordinary life's machinery would collapse. The snailfish that glide here have cell membranes softened with special lipids like antifreeze woven into flesh. Their bones are reduced to cartilage, their muscles thin and watery. They are living whispers, barely tethered to the physical world. To us they seem fragile, but here they are perfectly strong, molded by the same weight that would crush steel. It is as though the trench teaches its children to be soft, and in their softness they survive. This deep biosphere is sparse but not silent. Life here is slow but persistent, looping energy through the abyss like a faint pulse. Microbes consume sinking detritus, breaking it down molecule by molecule. Small crustaceans feed on the microbes and fish feed on the crustaceans, each step spaced thinly across the desert of the seafloor. Because food is rare, everything here moves with dreamlike patience. A meal might be followed by months of stillness, yet this slowness is a kind of harmony. It lets life endure where energy is scarce, where even the concept of day has no meaning. Here, existence is measured not in moments but in centuries. Even death behaves differently in this world. At the surface, a dead whale is consumed within weeks, stripped by sharks and crabs in the currents of time. But when a whale falls into the trench, its body sinks through miles of black water and lands like a quiet moon on the seafloor. There are no scavengers to tear it apart in frenzy. Instead, a few hardy worms and bacteria gather, feeding gently for decades. They release nutrients into the silt, seeding life in a circle of soft renewal. Such whale falls are rare gifts here, oases of energy in a desert of dark. They show how even endings can nourish, how silence can cradle the echoes of life for longer than we can imagine. The trench is also shaped by forces we cannot see but can only sense in trembling. Deep below its floor, slabs of sinking crust scrape against one another, building tension over centuries until they slip in sudden earthquakes. These quakes are born in silence but speak in waves that cross oceans. They remind us that the trench is not a grave but a hinge, part of the planet's living frame. Sometimes these quakes unleash tsunamis, vast walls of water that race toward shorelines where no one remembers the deep is listening. The trench does not rage or roar, it simply shifts, and the world far above feels its breath. In rare places along the trench's edges, water superheated by the Earth's mantle seeps back up, forming deep-sea vents. Here, minerals rich in iron, manganese, and sulfur billow out like underwater smoke. They harden into chimneys as tall as trees, dripping with heavy metals and heat. Around these chimneys gather microbial colonies that do not need sunlight. They feed on the chemical energy in the vent fluids, thriving where everything else fades. Some scientists think this is where life on content reference site 6 index equals 6 may have begun, at such hydrothermal vents where chemistry and warmth and shelter came together in the dark. If that is true, then the trench is not only ancient, it is ancestral. It may be the cradle from which all living things first rose. Above all, the trench holds a lesson in patience. The world above changes fast, seasons flicker, forests burn and grow again, civilizations rise and fall like tides. But here change is slow as stone. The water does not hurry and the creatures do not rush. A shadow on the silt may linger for decades. A chemical trace may last for millennia. Even sound moves differently, traveling farther, echoing softly in the cold. To be here is to step outside of time, to hear the long rhythm of the planet beneath the quick music of Huma. In days, the trench does not chase the future. It simply continues, carrying the memory of everything that has fallen into its arms. This deep memory is not only physical but chemical. The sediments at the trench floor lock away carbon from dead plankton, removing it from the surface world and storing it in darkness for millions of years. This slow burial helps balance the planet's climate, keeping the air breathable and the oceans alive. The trench, in its silence, quietly protects the world above. It is a guardian no one sees, a deep vault where the ocean stores its history and its breath. Without it, the planet would be hotter, harsher, less stable. Its stillness holds the surface steady. And so the silence beneath the world is not passive. It is active in a way that is deeper than motion. It holds the earth together, recycles its crust, nourishes its life, and carries its memory. It shows us another way of being, a way of enduring without rushing, of shaping without noise, of holding without grasping. If the surface ocean is like the planet's heartbeat, quick and restless, then the trench is its sleeping mind, vast and slow and dreaming. To drift here is to be reminded that even stillness can be alive, and that life itself began in such darkness long ago. When we linger long enough in the trench's stillness, something subtle begins to happen. The mind, so used to motion and noise, starts to loosen its grip. Thoughts drift more slowly, as if wrapped in water. The deep reshapes not only the body, but the sense of time itself. Here, the usual markers fade. No sunrise, no moonlight, no currents to count the hours. It is easy to imagine that this is how the world felt before memory began. The trench is not lifeless, but it lives at a pace so slow that it seems almost outside of life. This perception is part of its secret. It invites us to imagine what the earth is when stripped of our urgency, just matter and water and darkness enduring quietly. Even the machines that visit here must surrender to its patience. Submersibles descend for hours to reach the bottom, drifting like cautious seeds. Their lights cut narrow tunnels through the black, revealing only small circles of the world at a time. Cameras blink slowly, instruments hum, robotic arms move as delicately as moth wings. Each sample of sediment, each grain of silt, must be coaxed from the floor with infinite care, for a careless touch can stir a cloud that lingers for days. Every action feels reverent, as if the trench demands respect by its very slowness. And when the machines finally rise, they leave behind no trace, as though the deep closes gently over their memory. What these machines have revealed is astonishing, yet also humbling in its modesty. There are no colossal monsters here, no glowing cathedrals of coral. The trench is not a place of spectacle, but of persistence. It is populated mostly by small, translucent beings, amphipods with flexible shells, sea cucumbers like drifting silk ribbons, fragile snailfish hovering as if suspended in thought. Their lives are almost invisible, their rhythms softer than whispers. Yet they are perfect answers to their world. In them we see how life does not need grandeur to be miraculous. It only needs to fit, to endure, to find a way to keep breathing in impossible places. They are living proof that gentleness can survive even the heaviest weight. Above these creatures, unseen but constant, the trench continues its slow work. It pulls the content reference site, 0 index equals 0, ever downward beneath the content reference site, 1 index equals 1, folding the ocean floor like origami into the planet's mantle. This movement may seem distant from life, but it is part of everything. The rising mountains, the drifting continents, the shape of coastlines, all are echoes of this silent process. Even the air we breathe owes something to this abyss, for without subduction the cycle of carbon would halt, and the climate would unravel. So the trench is not only deep in space but deep in time, a hinge on which the history of the Earth turns. In its darkness, the trench also gathers the faint traces of our own world. Plastic fibers, chemical residues, and microscopic soot have drifted here from the surface, settling among the bones of ancient shells. Even our quietest actions seem to find their way to this place. It is a sobering reminder that nothing we do is truly separate. The deep accepts everything without judgment, folding it into its archive, but it also warns us in its silence that what we send downward does not vanish. It waits, it becomes part of the Earth's memory, and so the trench teaches another lesson, that nothing is ever truly forgotten, only hidden until the world is ready to remember. Yet despite our traces, the trench remains profoundly other. It is not ours. It does not answer to our calendars or our names. It has no need of sunlight, no care for seasons or stories. It simply is vast and untroubled. This otherness is part of its peace. To witness it is to glimpse a world beyond desire, beyond hurry, beyond the fragile urgency of human lives. It shows us what endurance looks like when freed from ambition, just being patiently for as long as the planet breathes. This is perhaps why its silence feels sacred. It holds a kind of still truth, a reminder of how small and bright and brief we are. And yet standing at the edge of this abyss in imagination, one cannot help but feel tenderness. Not fear but awe, not distance but kinship. For though the trench seems alien, it is made of the same planet as we are. The atoms in our bones once swirled in the same oceans, the same mantle plumes that shaped this chasm. The water in our cells may have passed through these depths as vapor eons ago, falling as rain, flowing to sea, sinking as part of the great conveyor of the world. In that sense, we are not separate from the trench at all. We are one more expression of the Earth, one more ripple on its slow and endless tide. This connection gives the silence a different weight. It is not an empty quiet, but a shared one. The trench holds not only its own history, but ours. It is the planet's memory palace, its hidden heart, beating at a pace too slow for us to hear. Perhaps that is why it calms the mind to think of it. It reassures us that there is a place where time does not chase itself in circles, where nothing is demanded, where everything is simply held. It reminds us that stillness is not the opposite of life, but part of it. That even as we hurry through our brief days, the world beneath us is breathing in long, slow sighs. As we imagine rising now from the floor of the content reference site 2 index equals 2, the water grows lighter shade by shade. The pressure loosens its hold. The darkness thins, tiny sparks of bioluminescence appear again like scattered memories lighting our path. The trench does not keep us. It only lends us its silence for a while. Soon the twilight zone returns, and then the blue, and then the glimmering skin of the surface. Waves roar, gulls cry, the sun scatters diamonds on the water. The world is bright and busy once more. Yet somewhere far below, that quiet stillness remains, untouched and unhurried, waiting like the pause between heartbeats. And as we breathe the bright air again, it is impossible not to carry something of that silence with us. It lingers like a cool echo at the edges of thought. It reminds us that beneath all our noise, the planet is patient. Beneath all our urgency, there is depth. The trench whispers that we too are part of this slow and ancient rhythm, that our lives are small but real, fleeting yet luminous, brief sparks against the backdrop of a world that has been dreaming in darkness for billions of years. And maybe that is enough, that we flicker for a moment above the silence, knowing it holds us gently, the way the deep holds everything. Far beneath the last rays of sunlight, where the ocean grows heavy and black, life takes on shapes that seem carved from imagination. The deep sea is not empty, though it looks that way from above. It is filled with quiet beings that have grown patient under the weight of the world. Down in the content reference site, 1 index equals 1, where pressure could crush steel and the cold could still thought, creatures move as if time has forgotten them. They do not race or rage. They simply drift, soft and luminous, like living thoughts suspended in darkness. To see them is to glimpse the poetry of survival written in the language of silence. As we sink into the twilight zone, about 200 meters below the surface, the blue begins to fade. Light dissolves into dim shadows, and the first flickers of otherworldly glow appear. This is where content reference site 2 index equals 2 begins to bloom, a gentle shimmer born from within living bodies. Tiny plankton spark like drifting embers. Jellyfish pulse with slow rings of blue, their bells opening and closing like the breath of the ocean. Small fish flash in sudden bursts, then vanish into blackness as if swallowed by night. This glow is not decoration. It is language. It is how life speaks when sight is scarce, signals of warning, of hunger, of longing. In the dark, light becomes conversation. Deeper still, the glow becomes more haunting. Lanternfish glide through the black with rows of tiny lights along their sides, like strings of fallen stars. The content reference site 3 index equals 3 carries a beam of red light, invisible to most creatures, to see prey that cannot see it. The content reference site 4 index equals 4 drifts like a shadow with a glowing lure dangling from its head, a tiny sun to draw life close enough to swallow whole. Around its jaws hangs a stillness that is almost sorrowful, a patience honed by scarcity. These predators wait for hours, even days, in perfect motionless silence, their entire bodies conserving energy for the rare instant when opportunity arrives. In a world without sunlight, they have become artists of waiting. By the time we reach 4,000 meters, the glow grows rare and the pressure fierce. The ocean here presses with the weight of hundreds of elephants on every square meter. Most creatures are small and soft, their bodies like drifting whispers. The content reference site 5 index equals 5 is one of the deepest living vertebrates known, found nearly 8,000 meters down. It has no scales and almost no bones, only a gel-like body that yields to the pressure instead of resisting it. Its heart beats slowly, its muscles barely stronger than water, yet it moves with quiet grace, weaving through the sediment as if weightless. Where we see fragility, the deep sees perfection. To survive here is not to resist but to yield. Beside the snailfish, amphipods scuttle like translucent ghosts across the trench floor. They are small crustaceans with flexible shells and powerful jaws, capable of eating nearly anything that drifts down from the surface. In this desert of food, they are tireless recyclers, turning the ocean's rain of dead matter into new life. Their bodies are laced with special enzymes that withstand the crushing pressure, and their blood carries antifreeze-like proteins to keep their cells from freezing in the near-icy water. They are ancient, unchanged for millions of years, quiet custodians of the abyss. Watching them is like watching time itself move slowly across the seafloor. Not all the trench's creatures crawl or swim. Some simply drift like ideas too delicate to land. Transparent holothurians or sea cucumbers hover just above the silt, rippling their gelatinous bodies to collect tiny flakes of marine snow. Their flesh is soft as jelly, their motions slow as dreaming. Glass sponges anchor to rocks, their skeletons made of fragile silica filigree. They filter the water drop by drop, patient as stone, some living for thousands of years. Their bodies glow faintly under submersible lights like frozen moonlight, but when the lights fade, they return to invisibility, dissolving back into darkness. It is as though they exist only when noticed, then slip quietly back into the memory of the deep. Even the microbes here are extraordinary. In the cracks of the trench floor, bacteria survive without sunlight, drawing energy from the chemicals that seep from the crushed rocks below. They feed on hydrogen, methane, and sulfur, breathing minerals instead of air. These tiny chemists form the base of a fragile food web, passing energy slowly upward through the abyss. Some scientists believe such microbes could resemble the earliest life on content reference oocyte, 6 index equals 6, living in darkness long before the first dawn. To touch one is to touch the beginning of biology, a whisper from the time when life was only a quiet experiment on a cooling planet. The deeper we go, the stranger the shapes become. Here are creatures like ribbons, like threads, like drifting feathers of light. They seem half real, as if sculpted from water and shadow. Their bodies are often transparent, their organs floating like tiny lanterns inside glass. They do not need eyes or bones or color. In the absence of light, they have shed everything unnecessary. What remains is essence, a softness honed by pressure, a patience shaped by cold. They live not in defiance of their world, but in perfect surrender to it. Watching them, it is hard to tell where the creature ends and the ocean begins. They are not visitors here. They are the darkness shaped into living form. These beings are not silent by nature. They are silent by necessity. Sound carries strangely in the deep. The cold water holds vibrations longer, letting whispers travel for miles. Any sudden motion, any careless splash could mean death. So the creatures have learned to move like thoughts without stirring the water. Their fins flutter as softly as sighs. Their hearts beat slowly, conserving each drop of energy. Even their metabolisms are slowed, their lives stretched thin across decades. Some anglerfish may live 50 years, though they grow no longer than a human hand. Time itself seems reluctant to pass here, as if the deep has convinced it to rest. And yet, for all their strangeness, these creatures are not monstrous. They are delicate, beautiful in a way the surface rarely notices. Their colors are subtle, pale blues, soft silvers, the faint glow of living stars. Their movements are patient and precise. They do not fight for space or chase glory. They endure quietly in a world that would crush anything loud. In their stillness is a kind of grace. They are not failures of evolution, but its quiet triumphs, shaped by darkness into poems of survival. They show us that life does not need light to be luminous or noise to be alive. It only needs to listen, to bend, to wait. To look at them is to feel something shift in the heart. The surface teaches us to grow fast, to burn bright, to reach always hig. But the trench teaches the opposite lesson, that softness can be strength, that patience can be power, that even in the heaviest darkness life can bloom. These creatures are living proof that the world does not need our light to shine. It has its own quiet glow, hidden in its deepest places, waiting for us to see it. And when we finally do, we find that the darkness is not empty after all. It is full of tiny stars, breathing gently, holding the shape of wonder. In the trench's endless night, every living thing is shaped not by the absence of light, but by the presence of pressure. The weight here is constant, a soft crushing that would collapse air-filled lungs and crack steel hulls. Yet life endures not by resisting the pressure, but by becoming part of it. The creatures of this abyss are not armored warriors. They are whispers made flesh, shaped from water and patience. Their existence reveals a truth that feels almost like a lullaby. That gentleness can survive what strength cannot. Where force would shatter, softness bends and flows and so remains. Inside their cells, deep-sea animals carry secret tools forged by millions of years of quiet evolution. Their proteins, which in surface creatures would crumble under pressure, are wrapped in special molecules called content reference oocyte, 1 index equals 1. These tiny guardians keep the proteins folded correctly, like careful hands holding delicate origami in the dark. Their cell membranes are rich in unsaturated fats that stay fluid even in freezing water, allowing their chemistry to flow where it would otherwise freeze. Even their DNA is protected, shielded from the crushing stress that could break its strands. To look at one of these creatures is to see an ordinary animal. To look within is to see a masterpiece of subtle defenses, a cathedral of microscopic grace. Their bodies, too, speak the language of patience. The content reference oocyte, 2 index equals 2, found in the content reference oocyte, 3 index equals 3, almost 8,000 meters down, has shed everything unnecessary. Its bones are reduced to soft cartilage, its muscles thin as mist, its organs nestled in a body more water than flesh. It moves with the slowness of thought, conserving energy in a world where food is rare. A single meal may sustain it for weeks. Its delicate frame would collapse at the surface, but here, in the crushing dark, it is perfectly strong. It is a living paradox, too fragile to survive where we live, yet flawless where we cannot. Beside it, amphipods scurry like translucent seeds of motion. These tiny crustaceans are the recyclers of the abyss, devouring whatever drifts down from the world above, flakes of dead plankton, fragments of scales, even the rare fall of a whale's bones. They can digest substances soaked in heavy metals that would poison other animals, their enzymes indifferent to toxins. Their shells are laced with aluminum scavenged from the surrounding water, a natural shield against the dissolving effects of high pressure. They are tireless in their work, stripping each morsel to its atoms and sending its energy back into the silent web of the deep. In them, the trench quietly renews itself. Even stranger are the gelatinous drifters, sea cucumbers, tunicates, and salps that float like slow dreams just above the seafloor. They are mostly invisible, their bodies transparent to avoid notice. Some are almost entirely water, their tissues so delicate they tear at the faintest touch. Yet they survive because the pressure that would crush others holds them together. They move not with muscles, but with the flow of the ocean itself, opening and closing their bodies to pump water gently through. They are like living currents, indistinguishable from their world. Watching them is like watching the shape of the ocean imagine itself for a moment before melting back into silence. These creatures do not chase or flee in sudden bursts. Instead, they live within a rhythm as slow as drifting sand. Their metabolisms are reduced to embers. A snailfish's heart may beat just a few times each minute. An amphipod may live for decades, eating only occasionally. Even reproduction is unhurried. Some deep-sea fishes produce only a handful of eggs at a time, each one nurtured slowly in the dark. Others practice content reference zoocyte, 4 index equals 4, like certain content reference zoocyte, 5 index equals 5, where a tiny male fuses his body to a much larger female, becoming little more than a pair of testes she carries with her. It is an intimacy so complete that it erases individuality. In the trench, even love becomes quiet and permanent. Food here is not a daily certainty but a rare gift, carried down from the bright skin of the ocean as content reference zoocyte, 6 index equals 6. This endless drizzle of tiny dead things, plankton, scales, fragments of shell, takes months or years to fall from the surface to the trench floor. Each particle carries the memory of sunlight, the ghost of a world these creatures will never see. They catch these flakes with frilled arms, with sticky nets of mucus, with patient mouths always slightly open. When something larger falls, a squid, a fish, a whale, it becomes a feast that may last for decades. Whole communities gather around such bounty, blooming briefly in the dark like invisible flowers before fading back into dormancy. In this way, death on the surface becomes life in the deep, and the trench keeps its quiet balance. Some of the trench's most remarkable creatures never move at all. Glass sponges anchor to the rocks, their skeletons woven from silica into lattices finer than frost. Water flows through their bodies slowly, filtered drop by drop over centuries. They feed on microscopic particles and bacteria, their lives stretched thin across millennia. Some may be 5,000 years old, older than all of human civilization. Their stillness is not emptiness but endurance. In their frozen patience, they seem less like animals and more like thoughts the ocean has decided to keep. Even bacteria here are shaped by pressure. They grow slowly in the cracks of the seafloor, feeding on the faint chemicals that seep from the rocks: hydrogen, methane, sulfur. These content reference zoocyte, 7 index equals 7, do not need sunlight or organic food. They make their own energy from minerals, spinning life out of stone. Some form delicate mats across the sediment like frost, barely visible unless lit by the lamps of a passing submersible. Others live deep inside the crust, kilometers beneath the trench floor, in total darkness and crushing heat. They are so different from surface life that scientists call them content reference zoocyte, 8 index equals 8. Yet they may be the most ancient and enduring life on content reference zoocyte, 9 index equals 9, unchanged since before the first dawn. In them, the trench remembers the beginning. Though they live in silence, these creatures are not isolated. They are woven into a web as delicate as lace, stretched thin across the abyss. Energy flows through this web slowly but surely, from microbes to amphipods to fish, each step carrying the ocean's memory forward. When a creature dies, its body becomes part of the seafloor, its atoms recycled into new life. Even their waste becomes nourishment. Nothing is wasted here because nothing can be. Every breath is precious, every flicker of energy reused. The trench teaches a lesson the surface often forgets, that life is not a race but a circle, and that the smallest contributions matter when time is long enough. In this world, even sound is rare. The deep sea is nearly silent, except for the occasional groan of shifting rocks or the faint crackle of distant earthquakes. The creatures themselves are quiet. They do not sing like whales or chatter like dolphins. Instead, they move like drifting thoughts, their bodies leaving barely a ripple. This silence is part of their survival. Sound would betray them, so they have learned to exist without announcing themselves, to pass through the water like dreams through sleep. In the trench, survival is a form of invisibility. To live is to be almost not there. Yet despite their stillness, these creatures are vital to the planet. They recycle the ocean's fallen matter, store carbon in their bodies and in the sediments they stir, and keep nutrients moving even at the edge of habitability. Without them, the ocean would choke on its own dead. The surface depends on their quiet labor, though it never sees them. They are the hidden caretakers of the world, holding the base of the food web steady. In this way, their slow, dark lives uphold the bright, quick lives above. It is an invisible thread of connection that binds the top of the world to its bottom, like roots holding up a tree. To know these creatures is to know a gentler kind of strength. They do not conquer their world, they merge with it. They do not fight the pressure, they embody it. They do not demand attention, they dissolve into the dark. Yet they endure where almost nothing else can. This is their quiet triumph, to turn the crushing weight of the earth into a cradle instead of a cage. They are living poems written by the ocean, each one a verse about resilience whispered in the language of silence. And when we think of them, hovering like soft lanterns in the dark, we can almost hear what the deep has been trying to say all along, that life can be strongest when it is softest, and most enduring when it is unseen. If the trench itself is the earth's sleeping mind, then its creatures are the dreams that drift through it, slow, glowing, almost silent. They live far beyond the reach of sunlight, yet they are not forgotten by life. They are its hidden memory, its proof that existence does not always require warmth or light or haste. To watch them is to see the patience of the planet made alive. They move with the stillness of stone, yet they are not lifeless. They are the quiet pulse of the deep, beating so slowly it is almost invisible, a reminder that life does not need to be loud to be real. In their shapes we find echoes of time itself. The content referenceoicite, 0 index equals 0, with its translucent body and tender heartbeat, seems like something half-formed, a sketch of a vertebrate drawn from memory. The tiny content referenceoicite, 1 index equals 1, with its armor of scavenged aluminum and its jaws like miniature knives, is an ancient survivor, older than mountains, still scuttling through the dark. Even the drifting sea cucumbers and glass sponges seem more like moments than animals, soft loops of matter that have paused for 1,000 years to remember what water feels like. They have been shaped not by competition, but by endurance. They show us what life becomes when time is its only sculptor, slow, delicate, luminous with quiet. To us they seem fragile, but their fragility is strength in disguise. Their softness protects them from the crushing weight of the ocean, letting the pressure flow through them instead of breaking them. Their transparency hides them from predators, turning their bodies into ghosts. Their stillness saves their energy, stretching thin the thread of their lives across decades. In a world where motion means death, they have chosen stillness. In a world where noise draws danger, they have chosen silence. And in doing so, they have survived where even machines struggle to last a few hours. They are not weak. They are perfectly strong in the only way that matters here, by belonging completely to their world. Even their glow speaks of patience. Content reference OSite 2 index equals 2 is costly, requiring precious energy to create, yet they use it sparingly like tiny lamps lit only when needed. A sudden flash to startle a hunter, a slow pulse to call a mate, a faint shimmer to lure drifting prey into invisible jaws. Their light is not a blaze but a whisper. It does not conquer the darkness. It dances within it. In the deep, light is never wasted. It appears for a moment, then fades gently back into the dark, like a thought released. Watching these small glows drift through the black is like watching stars fall into sleep. Their world may seem far from ours, but it is not separate. The surface ocean depends on the trench and its creatures more than it knows. Every scrap of sinking matter they consume, every breath they take, every atom they bury in the silt is part of a slow balance that keeps the planet alive. They recycle the ocean's waste, locking away carbon and clearing space for new life. They stir the seafloor, mixing nutrients that eventually rise again to feed plankton, which feed fish, which feed the world. Without them, the ocean would fill with the weight of its own dead. The surface thrives because the deep endures. It is an unseen partnership, quiet and essential. We often think of evolution as a race towards strength, speed, and brilliance. But here, in the quiet black beneath the world, evolution has chosen another path. It has shaped creatures not for competition, but for harmony. They are not swift or fierce. They are careful, unhurried, precise. They take only what they need and leave no mark. Their lives are not measured in victories, but in the soft persistence of breathing, feeding, reproducing, dissolving back into the ocean that made them. They remind us that life is not always about rising higher. Sometimes it is about sinking gently into place and staying there, whole and unbroken, for as long as the world allows. Their very existence reshapes how we see the idea of life. We are used to thinking of life as something bright and busy, something that moves and calls and reaches. But these beings show another kind of vitality, quiet, dim, almost invisible. They do not blaze like the sunlit fish of coral reefs. They do not leap like dolphins or clash like sharks. They simply are woven into the dark like threads. And yet their hearts beat, their cells divide, their lineages stretch back unbroken for millions of years. They are proof that life is not defined by light or sound or motion. It is defined by continuity, by the delicate refusal to stop. Perhaps this is why their world feels so peaceful to imagine. It is not just that they are far away or hidden. It is that they live without hurry, without struggle, without the constant urgency that fills our lives. They do not chase futures or fear endings. They drift in the endless present, content to be part of the slow rhythm of the deep. Watching them is like listening to the earth breathe in its sleep. It makes our own rushing seem small, our noise unnecessary. It reminds us that there is another way to be alive, not by burning fast, but by lasting gently. Even their deaths are quiet. When one of these creatures stops moving, it does not leave a corpse to rot in sunlight. It drifts downward like a falling leaf until it joins the soft silt of the seafloor. There it dissolves, its atoms slipping back into the dark to feed the microbes and the amphipods in the slow rain of marine snow. Nothing here is wasted, nothing vanishes, everything becomes part of everything else. In this way, the trench keeps its balance. The darkness is not an ending but a cradle, a place where life returns to rest until it is ready to rise again. The creatures know this without knowing it. They simply let go and the ocean holds them. When the first submersibles sent back images from the content reference site, 3 index equals 3, many people expected monsters. Instead, they found these small, quiet beings glowing softly in the dark. It disappointed some, but it comforted others. There were no terrors waiting in the abyss, only life, fragile and patient. It was as if the deep had been keeping a secret, and that secret was not horror but peace. The creatures did not roar or attack. They simply drifted in the lights, unafraid, as if to say, "This is what life becomes when it has nothing to prove. This is what the earth dreams of in its sleep." And perhaps that is their final gift to us, the reminder that not all survival must be loud. The creatures of the trench are invisible to most of the world, yet they endure as they have for millions of years. They do not seek glory, yet they are as ancient as the stars. They are not celebrated, yet they hold the foundations of the ocean in place. In their silence is their strength. In their darkness is their light. To remember them is to remember that life's greatest power is not in noise, but in continuity, in the simple, stubborn act of being, again and again, even when no one is watching. So let us leave them here, drifting in the dark like tiny stars, keeping their slow watch over the deep. Let them remain unseen, unhurried, unchanged. The ocean needs them. The world needs them. And maybe in some quiet way we need them too, to remind us that there is beauty in stillness, strength in softness, and meaning in simply enduring. They are the deep's most delicate truth, that even where the world seems empty, life is still breathing softly, patiently, forever. Far below the restless waves, where no storm can reach and no sunlight dares to follow, the earth hides its oldest bones. They lie deep within the content reference site, 1 index equals 1, buried under miles of black water, folded into the crust like ancient memories. These are the drowned remains of mountains, the broken edges of continents, the silent ribs of the planet itself. They do not rise toward the sky, they sink into darkness, bending slowly under the weight of the world. Down here, geology becomes something softer, almost tender. Rocks drift like thoughts through time. Mountains do not fall, they lie down, and the ocean pulls a blanket of silt over their shoulders. The trench marks the edge of 2 enormous plates of Earth's crust. The content reference site 2 index equals 2, and the content reference site 3 index equals 3, pressing toward one another like vast silent glaciers. Where they meet, the Pacific plate bends downward, sliding beneath its neighbor in an endless bow. This slow, invisible movement is called content reference site 4 index equals 4, and it is the engine that carves the trench's impossible depth. Every year, the plate sinks a few centimeters farther, carrying with it a strip of ancient seafloor crust. It is a slow burial, patient as dust, and yet over millions of years it has dragged whole mountain ranges down into the dark. These drowned peaks now lie tilted and cracked along the trench walls, hidden spines of stone that once stood in open ocean sunlight. When the plate begins to bend, it fractures. Vast slabs of basalt crack and tilt, forming underwater cliffs taller than any building. The stress squeezes the rocks until they groan, sending tremors shivering through the water. These earthquakes rise from the bones of sunken mountains, sudden sighs from the deep. Yet the trench itself remains silent on the surface. The energy blooms and fades in secret, and the waves above never know the crust has shifted. If the ocean is a body, then this place is its hinge, quietly flexing beneath the skin. The bones here do not rest. They are always moving, folding and grinding and vanishing inch by inch into the planet's molten heart. As the Pacific plate sinks, it carries not only rock but water. Seawater seeps into its pores and cracks, trapped like breath between the grains. When the plate is dragged down into the mantle, the heat drives that water out. It rises through the overlying rocks, melting them, feeding the magma chambers that eventually spark volcanoes. This is how mountains are born from mountains' deaths, how the fall of one peak becomes the fire that lifts another. The trench is not just an ending. It is part of a cycle so vast it reshapes the face of content reference site 5 index equals 5. The ashes of drowned ridges become the stone of new continents. The bones of mountains buried here will rise again someday in faraway lands. Even the rocks themselves tell this story in whispers. If you could hold a piece of the trench wall, you would find layers upon layers pressed together. Dark volcanic basalt from mid-ocean ridges, soft chalky ooze from ancient plankton shells, thin streaks of clay stained red by iron drifting from distant continents. Each layer is a memory of a vanished ocean. Some are over 100 million years old, formed when dinosaurs still walked the land. They have traveled across whole ocean basins like slow ships, carried on the moving crust until they reached this edge of the world. Now they are being folded down, their stories erased one atom at a time as they sink toward the mantle. The trench is an archive being quietly unbound. As they descend, the pressure squeezes these rocks with unimaginable force. Their crystals deform, their minerals change, their shapes blur. Basalt becomes eclogite, a dense green rock that sinks faster than the crust around it. Sediments are compressed into metamorphic stone, their fossil shells crushed to dust. Water trapped in the minerals is released, fueling deep earthquakes and feeding the birth of magma. Nothing here is static. Even the oldest rocks are still becoming something else. The trench is not a grave, but a chrysalis, turning solid stone back into molten beginnings. The mountains that vanish here are not lost. They are only changing shape. Between these folded slabs lie narrow valleys filled with fine gray silt. This silt is the slow dust of the ocean, the remains of creatures that lived and died far above, the ash of distant volcanoes, even the faint soot of meteor impacts from space. Over millions of years, it drifts down and settles on the trench floor like snow on sleeping hills. It buries the jagged bones of drowned ridges, smoothing them into gentle forms. If we could sweep the silt away, we would see shattered peaks and tilted cliffs, mountains turned sideways and broken by the weight of the world. But the ocean prefers to hide its ruins. It covers them softly, as if tucking the planet's old skeletons into bed. Sometimes, though, the trench remembers its buried mountains. Tremors crack the silt and expose bright scars of stone. Landslides send clouds of sediment blooming like underwater storms. Submersibles have captured glimpses of these hidden ridges, walls of dark rock rising abruptly from the flat seafloor, their edges sharp as knives, their flanks dusted with drifting snow. They seem strangely alive, like the ribs of some colossal sleeping creature. They are not fossils, but bones still moving, still sinking, still reshaping the world. Their presence is quiet but powerful, a reminder that even in the stillest places the earth is breathing. Above these sunken mountains, the water itself seems heavier, as if it knows the weight of what lies below. Sound travels differently here, deeper and slower, echoing faintly through the cold. It is easy to imagine that the rocks are listening. The silence is not empty. It is thick, like a pause held for millions of years. To linger here is to feel time stretch thin, to sense that the surface world is only a flicker above this ancient machinery. The trench holds the rhythm of the planet in its walls, the pulse of plate and mantle and stone, beating so slowly we cannot hear it. But it is there, shaping the world one quiet breath at a time. To see these buried mountains is to glimpse the patience of the earth. They do not resist their sinking. They bend and vanish without protest, carrying their weight down into darkness. Yet from their dissolution will rise new peaks, new ridges, new islands reaching for the sky. The trench is the hinge between ending and beginning, the place where the planet recycles its bones. Every grain of rock here is part of that long rhythm, falling, melting, rising again. It is a rhythm older than oceans, older than air, older than life itself. The bones of mountains are only resting. Someday they will stand again, though not in the same place, not in the same form. The deep is only borrowing them for a while. The mountains buried in the content referenceoe site, 0 index equals 0, are not silent corpses. They are still moving, still shaping the world in ways almost too slow for human minds to follow. Their descent is invisible from the surface, but it is relentless, a quiet migration of stone into the planet's hidden heart. Every moment the content referenceoe site, 1 index equals 1 inches deeper beneath the content referenceoe site, 2 index equals 2, dragging whole ridges with it, folding their peaks down like paper into the mantle's heat. The bones of these mountains are caught in a slow journey from solid to molten, from light to dark, from surface to silence. To watch them is to watch time itself flowing like cold honey. As the rocks descend, they enter realms of pressure that rewrite their very nature. Basalt, born in fire at mid-ocean ridges, is dense and black, its crystals locked tightly together, but under the weight of miles of ocean and crust, its structure begins to change. Water trapped in its minerals is squeezed out like breath. Its crystals shiver and realign, transforming into new minerals. Jade green content referenceoe site, 3 index equals 3, streaked with garnet and blue glimmering, content referenceoe site, 4 index equals 4. These metamorphic rocks are denser than the crust above them, so they sink faster, pulling the plate deeper still. It is a chain reaction of gravity and transformation, stone teaching stone how to fall. Even here in darkness, the mountains are becoming something new. The squeezing of these mountains releases more than water. It releases earthquakes. As the slabs bend and fracture, they build up tension over centuries. When the stress becomes too great, they snap with a force that shudders through the entire ocean. These deep quakes are born from the breaking bones of sunken peaks, sudden sighs of rock giving way. Most go unnoticed by the world above, their energy swallowed by the sea. But sometimes they are strong enough to send tsunamis racing across whole oceans, carrying the trench's secret violence to distant shores. The silence of this place is not emptiness. It is tension held still, a bowstring drawn for centuries before it lets go. In their descent, these mountains carry the fingerprints of the surface with them. Layered into their slopes are thin sheets of chalk from ancient plankton, clays blown from continents, and even tiny beads of glass from meteor impacts. As they are dragged downward, these layers are folded and ground together, stirring the surface world into the deep. They become part of the mantle's chemistry, feeding the creation of new magma. That magma may rise thousands of kilometers away, feeding volcanic arcs and island chains. The trench is the hidden root of these distant fires. Without its slow burial of mountains, the ring of volcanoes around the content referenceoe site, 5 index equals 5, the fiery necklace of the content referenceoe site, 6 index equals 6, would go dark. The fall of peaks here fuels the rise of peaks elsewhere. Even their carbon becomes part of the cycle. The skeletons of tiny plankton that settled on these mountains over millions of years are rich in carbon, once drawn from the air by photosynthesis. As the mountains sink, that carbon is carried deep into the mantle, locked away from the atmosphere for millions of years. This slow burial is one of the planet's quiet safety valves. It keeps the climate stable, preventing the air from growing too hot and heavy. Without subduction, carbon would build endlessly in the sky, and the seas would boil. The mountains' bones are not only remnants of the past, they are guardians of the future, holding the planet's breath steady while no one watches. Between the slabs of sinking crust lie fault zones where stone grinds against stone in endless darkness. Here, immense friction creates heat, enough to warm the surrounding rock and water despite the trench's icy depths. Sometimes the heat cracks the crust, opening tiny vents that leak mineral-rich fluids. These fluids carry whispers from the deep mantle, iron, manganese, sulfur, rare elements dissolved in boiling brine. When they meet the cold seawater, they solidify into delicate chimneys of metal. Around these vents, microbial colonies bloom, feeding on chemical energy instead of sunlight. They paint the rocks with white and orange mats, soft as breath, fragile as frost. These are the smallest children of the drowned mountains, living proof that even in decay, stone can still give birth. Above the slabs, gravity drags the trench walls downward, making them creep and crumble over time. Landslides rumble silently through the abyss, carrying clouds of sediment that drift for years before settling. Each collapse reveals new bones, fresh cliffs of fractured basalt and green eclogite, sharp ridges newly exposed. These scars are quickly hidden again by the ocean's patient snow, but for a moment they show the raw skeleton of the planet. Submersibles have captured glimpses of these fleeting wounds, jagged ridges rising from the mud like black teeth, their edges glowing faintly in artificial light. They are reminders that nothing here is still, that even the oldest stones are still moving toward their next shape. Time behaves differently around these sunken mountains. On the surface, change comes fast, forests burn and regrow, rivers shift their paths, cities rise and fall. But here, change is as slow as sleep. A single ridge might take tens of millions of years to vanish into the mantle. A grain of silt may rest on its flank for centuries before drifting into a trench valley. Even sound lingers, echoing faintly through the cold for miles. To be here is to step outside of clocks, to feel time stretched thin and soft. The trench does not hurry. It folds the world at its own pace, reshaping continents one patient inch at a time. If we could follow one mountain from its Earth to its burial, we would see the whole life of the Earth unfolding. It would begin at a mid-ocean ridge, where molten rock wells up from the mantle and cools into dark basalt under newborn seas. Over millions of years, the mountain would drift across the ocean floor on its plate, collecting layers of shells and dust and life. Eventually, it would reach the trench, where gravity would bend it downward. It would crack and tilt and grind as it sank, its crystals changing, its water squeezed out, its carbon locked away. Deeper still, it would melt into magma, rising again somewhere far away as new crust, new volcano, new mountain. This is the slow breathing of the planet. Exhale at the ridges, inhale at the trenches. The bones of mountains are the breath of the world made stone. To think of this is to feel small, but also held. The ground beneath our feet is not fixed. It is drifting, folding, renewing itself in cycles older than life. The continents we stand on were built from the wreckage of ancient seas. The rocks in our hands may once have been plankton shells pressed into a sinking slope, or lava born from the melting bones of drowned ridges. We carry the trench's history without knowing it. Every mountain we see on the surface has a shadow buried below, still sinking, still becoming part of the planet's hidden heart. The trench is not distant, it is under everything. And so the bones of mountains beneath the sea are not ruins, they are promises. They show us that endings are not final, that what vanishes may return in another form, that even stone can be reborn. Their quiet descent is not loss but preparation. They are becoming magma, becoming islands, becoming the future shape of the world. It will take millions of years, longer than memory, but they are patient. They have always been patient. While we rush through our brief centuries, they drift through eternity, folding themselves gently into the dark so the planet can keep breathing. Beneath the dark weight of the content reference site, 0 index equals 0, the bones of mountains lie folded like sleeping giants. They are not silent because they are gone. They are silent because they are waiting. Their peaks, once sharp and proud above the waves, now rest miles below the surface, softened by silt and time. To most of the world, they are forgot, yet they are not gone. They are simply becoming something else, something deeper, something quieter. In their stillness, they hold a promise that nothing in nature is ever truly lost, only transformed, only folded back into the long breath of the planet. The content reference site, 1 index equals 1, carries these mountains downward grain by grain, sliding them beneath the content reference site 2 index equals 2 in a slow bow that has lasted millions of years. This movement is invisible from the surface, but it is one of the planet's great pulses, as steady as a heartbeat. Each year the trench grows a little deeper, the mountains a little lower. Their weight presses into the mantle, where heat and pressure melt them back into the molten rock from which they once rose. This cycle has built and destroyed whole continents. It has raised islands from the sea and drowned them again. The mountains that vanish here will return one day in new forms, in places we cannot imagine, carrying the memory of their journey in their atoms. Even as they sink, these mountains leave faint traces in the ocean around them. Their crumbling flanks release minerals into the cold water, iron, silica, calcium, feeding drifting plankton and quiet microbial mats. Their shifting faults stir slow currents that mix deep water and surface water, helping to move nutrients through the sea. Their buried carbon cools the air above, their subducted water fuels distant volcanoes. They are not dead matter, they are the hidden skeleton of the planet's life. The forests and rivers and cities on the surface owe their shape to these drowned ridges, though they will never see them. The deep holds up the sky in silence. To imagine their scale is almost impossible. Some of these peaks were once taller than the content reference site, 3 index equals 3, built at mid-ocean ridges where molten rock welled up from the mantle like glowing breath. Over tens of millions of years, they drifted across the ocean floor, collecting the quiet dust of dead plankton and the slow snow of volcanic ash. When they reached the trench, gravity took them. They tilted, cracked, and slid into the dark. Now they lie broken across the trench walls, fragments of continents in waiting. Submersibles have glimpsed them under thin layers of silt, black cliffs rising from the seafloor, their edges sharp and gleaming in artificial light. They are bones stripped of flesh, still holding the shape of what they once were. Time moves differently here. A single landslide might take minutes, yet its sediments may rest undisturbed for thousands of years. A peak might crumble in silence and spend millions more. Years drifting toward the mantle. There is no rush. The trench does not measure time as we do. It keeps no calendar, marks no seasons. It moves at the pace of stone, which is to say the pace of eternity. To watch these mountains sink is to watch the world breathe in reverse, exhaling continents, inhaling seas, folding the surface inward to make room for what comes next. The trench reminds us that the planet is not static. It is alive, though it lives too slowly for our eyes to see. We often think of mountains as symbols of permanence, but here they are revealed as temporary. Their heights are only pauses in the planet's slow conversation with itself. Even the greatest peaks are destined to fall, to be carried downward grain by grain into the dark. Yet this is not tragedy, it is renewal. The same heat that melts their bones will someday raise new mountains elsewhere, islands still unborn. The cycle is endless, and in its endlessness it is comforting. Nothing is wasted, nothing ends. The drowned mountains are not failures. They are part of the Earth's memory, part of its quiet promise to keep remaking itself. Even the sediments that bury them are storytellers. They arrive one flake at a time, carrying the remains of life from the bright skin of the ocean. Each grain is a tiny monument, a fragment of plankton shell, a dust mote from a desert half a world away, a speck of volcanic glass from a distant eruption. They fall slowly, taking years to drift through the miles of black water. When they land, they settle gently on the stone bones, layer upon layer, century after century. In this way, the surface world becomes part of the deep. The laughter of sunlight, the dance of waves, the brief lives of drifting plankton, all are folded into the bones of mountains, hidden but not lost. The trench is the planet's memory, written in dust. When submersibles glide through this abyss, their lights carve small tunnels through the dark. They reveal only a glimpse of the buried peaks before fading again into silence. The rocks do not respond, they do not tremble or shine, they simply endure. Their patience is absolute. Even when fractured and folded and buried, they remain themselves, waiting to become something new. It is a patience so deep it becomes peaceful, almost tender. Standing on the surface, we see only the ocean's restless skin. But beneath it, these mountains are teaching another kind of strength, the strength of surrender, the strength of becoming part of something larger than yourself. It is easy to forget that our continents rest on the remnants of such ancient cycles. The ground beneath our feet is built from the ghosts of drowned peaks, from stones that once sank like these into the trench's dark arms. The hills we walk are made of melted ocean crust, risen again after millions of years of darkness. Even our bodies carry this memory. The calcium in our bones was once part of the shells of tiny plankton that settled on a sinking ridge. The iron in our blood, once part of a mountain's molten heart. We are not separate from these drowned peaks. We are their echo, their continuation, their children of stone and water and time. And so the bones of mountains beneath the sea are not lost. They are part of everything. They are the hidden heartbeat of the world, the quiet machinery that keeps the surface alive. They remind us that strength does not always look like standing tall. Sometimes it looks like bending. Sometimes it looks like sinking gracefully, trusting that the fall is part of the rise. The trench cradles them gently, carrying them into darkness not as punishment but as preparation. They are not gone, they are only resting. Someday, in another place, in another age, they will rise again, carrying the memory of this silence inside them. As we leave them in imagination, lying in their black cathedral of water, it is impossible not to feel reverence. They have stood taller than clouds and sunk lower than dreams. They have burned, drifted, broken, and now they are still. Yet they are not defeated. They are part of the Earth's breath, its endless cycle of creation. The trench holds them softly as the planet holds all things it loves, and in that stillness they endure. The bones of mountains beneath the sea are not ruins. They are lullabies of stone, whispering that even what seems to fall forever is only finding its way home. Far below the floor of the content reference SOE site, 1 index equals 1, deeper than the last threads of sunlight in the coldest reaches of black water, the earth still burns. While the surface drifts in blue stillness, the crust beneath it is quietly melting. Here, beneath the drowned mountains and folded slabs of stone, rivers of fire move in silence. They do not roar, they do not glow in the dark. They flow like buried thoughts deep inside the planet's mind. This is the mantle, a hidden ocean of slow-moving rock, solid yet soft, so hot it creeps like honey. It is the secret heart of the world, and it is always breathing fire. The trench exists because of this breath. The content referenceoe site, 2 index equals 2, heavy with ancient seafloor and the weight of countless drowned mountains, slides beneath the content referenceoe site, 3 index equals 3, and sinks into the mantle in a motion called content referenceoe site, 4 index equals 4. As it descends, it carries trapped seawater deep into the hot rock below. That water lowers the melting point of the mantle, coaxing solid stone into molten streams. Pockets of magma form like glowing embers in the dark, rising slowly through the overlying crust. Some will feed distant volcanoes at the surface, where they will pour out as lava and build new islands from the sea. Others will remain hidden forever, flowing unseen beneath the abyss, reshaping the world in secret. These hidden rivers move slowly, too slow for eyes to see. The mantle does not boil or churn, it creeps, flowing only a few centimeters each year. Yet over millions of years, this slow motion moves continents, opens and closes oceans, raises mountains and drags them down again. The rock itself behaves like a memory, holding the shape of forces long gone and passing their echoes forward. The heat that drives this motion is ancient, leftover warmth from the planet's birth 4.5 billion years ago, mixed with the quiet decay of radioactive elements deep inside the core. It is a heat so steady it has never gone out. The surface world changes in centuries, but the mantle changes in ages. Above these glowing streams, the crust bends and cracks under the stress. Sometimes the molten rock pushes upward through weak points, intruding into the base of the crust like slow lightning. It cools there in the dark, forming new veins of stone called plutons. Other times it rises farther, gathering in chambers near the surface until the pressure forces it out through volcanoes. Many of the fiery arcs that ring the content referenceoe site, 5 index equals 5, are fed by magma born from the trench's sunken slabs. Though the trench itself is cold and black, it gives birth to fire far away. Every island in the content referenceoe site, 6 index equals 6, carries this secret in its roots. Its volcanoes burn with the ashes of drowned mountains. The chemistry of this magma carries whispers of its origin. It is rich in water, carbon dioxide, and other gases squeezed from the subducted crust. When it reaches the surface, these gases escape in plumes of steam and ash. The water vapor helps magma explode into fine volcanic glass, while the carbon returns to the sky to feed the planet's living skin. In this way, the deep fire is part of the air we breathe. It recycles the ocean's buried carbon back into the atmosphere, keeping the planet's climate in balance. Without these hidden rivers of fire, the carbon would stay locked in the crust forever, and the world above would grow cold and still. The breath of life rides on the breath of stone. Even when the magma does not reach the surface, it changes the crust above it. Its heat bakes the rocks, driving fluids through their fractures and weaving new minerals into their bones. Gold, copper, and rare elements crystallize in these cracks, hidden treasure left by vanished magma. Over millions of years, these veins may rise to the surface as mountains erode, scattering their riches across the world. The coins in our pockets, the copper in our wires, the gold in our teeth, all are echoes of these buried fires. They are gifts from the silent rivers that wind beneath the abyss, shaping the world from within while the surface rushes above. Though they are born in silence, these fires sometimes speak. When the stress in the sinking slabs becomes too great, it releases in deep earthquakes, cracking the crust and letting magma surge. These tremors echo faintly through the cold water above like muffled heartbeats. They are reminders that the trench's stillness is not sleep but tension. The crust may seem solid, but it is always moving, always bending, always making way for the fire that waits below. Even here in the planet's deepest shadow, change is constant. The bones of the earth are not dead, they are molten inside, and they are always turning over. The water above these hidden rivers makes their world stranger still. As seawater seeps down into the crust and meets the heat of magma, it boils into superheated brine. This brine carries dissolved metals and minerals, then bursts back upward through cracks in the seafloor as content reference site 7 index equals 7. Around these vents, chimneys of black and white minerals rise from the seafloor like towers, dripping with molten-looking metals. Here, life gathers in impossible abundance. Microbes that feed on chemicals, shrimp with eyes on their backs, pale crabs wandering through clouds of steam. They are living proof that fire can cradle life even in the coldest abyss. These tiny gardens are nourished by the same hidden heat that melts mountains. NS the same slow fire that moves the continents. Life here does not need sunlight, it drinks the breath of stone. Above all, these buried rivers are quiet. They do not blaze like surface lava. They move unseen, patient as tides of rock. Their heat is the planet's oldest memory, their motion its slowest thought. To drift above them in a submersible is to sense their presence like a heartbeat through stone, too deep to see yet too constant to doubt. The trench's stillness floats on their secret motion. It is the silence of a world that is never truly still, the pause between breaths of fire. These rivers have been flowing since before there was air or rain or life. They will still be flowing long after the last light fades from the sky. They are the world's oldest promise, that even in darkness, something is always moving, always beginning again. Beneath the still black waters of the content reference site, 0 index equals 0, the slow rivers of fire continue their ancient work. They move unseen, winding through the mantle like molten ghosts, carrying the planet's heat upward in silence. Their path is not straight but looping, curling around sinking slabs of crust as if hesitant to rise. These are not wildfires. They are patient currents flowing through rock that moves like clay over vast ages. They have no color here, no roar, no blaze, only warmth and motion, steady and unhurried. If the surface is the world's heartbeat, quick and restless, then these buried fires are its deep pulse, too slow to hear yet impossible to stop. They begin where the content reference site, 1 index equals 1, folds downward beneath the content reference site, 2 index equals 2, vanishing into the mantle in a slow arc. This sinking crust carries with it seawater trapped in its pores, minerals, and even tiny pockets of gas. As the slab descends into the hotter layers below, the heat squeezes out this water. It seeps upward through the overlying mantle, lowering the melting point of the rock. Solid stone softens into liquid here, drop by drop, until streams of magma gather in hidden chambers. This is how the trench births fire from drowning stone, how endings become beginnings in the dark. The rocks do not fight their fate, they melt, and their fragments rise again. These rising streams are rich with the chemistry of their journey. They carry water, carbon dioxide, chlorine, sulfur, and rare trace elements scavenged from the crust. When they reach the upper mantle, they begin to feed the great chain of volcanoes that arcs above the trench. The content reference site, 3 index equals 3, islands are only the visible tips of this fire, volcanoes built from the bones of the seafloor, each eruption a whisper from the trench's hidden heart. Their lava cools into new land, their gases rise to seed clouds and rain, their heat stirs the air into winds. In this way, the quiet rivers of fire beneath the abyss shape the weather of the world above. They are not just the deep's secret, they are part of the surface's breath. Even when the magma does not erupt, it still changes the crust that holds it. As it rises and stalls, its heat cooks the surrounding rocks, driving chemical reactions that grow crystals of copper, gold, and rare minerals in the cracks. These veins will someday rise as mountains erode, scattering their riches into rivers and soil. Our coins, our electronics, our jewelry are all echoes of this hidden alchemy. The deep fire leaves its mark not in flames, but in whispers, in metals cooled from liquid stone, carried silently toward the light. It is strange to think that the gleam of gold on a ring might have begun as heat under the trench, glowing softly in the dark millions of years ago. The movement of these hidden fires also reshapes whole continents. As the hot mantle rises beneath the trench, it pushes the overlying crust upward, building chains of volcanoes and island arcs. At the same time, the cold slabs sinking beside them drag the crust downward, carving out deep basins. This push and pull bends the planet's skin into folds, mountains, ridges, trenches like wrinkles on a sleeping face. Over millions of years, the pattern shifts. Oceans open and close, continents drift together and break apart again. The surface may seem solid, but it is only the thin shell of a slow tide of rock. The rivers of fire below are its unseen current, turning the planet gently over in its sleep. Sometimes these buried fires stir without warning. When stress builds in the sinking slab, it can crack the crust above, letting magma surge upward in sudden pulses. Deep earthquakes bloom from these breaks, sending shockwaves through the dark water. They are muffled but powerful, like distant drums beneath the silence. The energy of these quakes can trigger eruptions at the surface, where ash and fire explode into the sky. Yet even these violent moments are part of a slow balance. They release tension, make space for new magma, and reset the cycle of motion. The D.P. fire does not rage. It breathes, expanding and contracting in quiet rhythms older than life. Around the trench, the clearest signs of these hidden fires are the content reference site, 4 index equals 4, that dot the seafloor like scattered gardens. Superheated water gushes from them, rich with metals and minerals leached from the crust. The hot fluid meets the cold seawater and crystallizes into chimneys of black and white stone, spires that grow upward like frozen smoke. Around their warm sides, life blooms in colors the deep rarely shows: red-tubed worms, white crabs, shrimp glowing faintly blue. These creatures live on chemical energy from the vent fluids, not on sunlight. They are nourished by the same fire that melts the planet's crust, living proof that warmth can seep even into the coldest dark. Their quiet colonies are oases in the abyss, lanterns fed by buried stars. Beneath these vents, magma chambers pulse slowly like deep hearts. Their walls are lined with crystals grown from molten rock, glittering in the dark where no eyes can see them. The magma inside moves at the pace of years, rising and cooling, rising again. Sometimes it stalls and solidifies, becoming new crust. Sometimes it finds a path upward and feeds a distant volcano. Each pulse reshapes the world, though the world may not notice for centuries. This is how the planet grows, not in sudden bursts, but in endless patience, in movements too slow for our senses to follow. The rivers of fire are not in a hurry. They have been flowing for 4 billion years, and they will flow for billions more. Their heat is the oldest thing the Earth still carries. It comes from the planet's birth, from the collisions of ancient rocks that built its body, and from the quiet decay of radioactive atoms deep inside its core. This heat seeps outward like a soft exhale, moving through the mantle to the crust, from the crust to the ocean, and from the ocean to the sky. It drives the winds and currents, the rains and seasons, the whole restless dance of the surface. We live in its shadow without knowing it. Every mountain, every tree, every breath of air is shaped by this hidden warmth. Even our lives depend on it. Without the deep fire, the crust would cool and lock, the continents would stop moving, and the planet would fall asleep. And yet, for all their power, these rivers of fire remain invisible. No human eye has seen them directly. We know them only from tremors, from heat, from the traces they leave in stone. They are the planet's secret handwriting scrawled slowly beneath the oceans. They do not demand attention. They do not roar for notice. They are content to flow in darkness, to keep the world alive quietly. There is something comforting in that the planet carries such immense energy with such gentleness. It reminds us that strength does not always blaze. Sometimes it glows unseen, patient, and endless, holding the world together from below. If we could listen closely enough, past the noise of our own thoughts, we might hear them. Not as sound, but as presence. The deep warmth that holds the crust afloat, the slow motion that bends continents like paper, the quiet push that keeps the earth awake. They are the breath beneath the ocean, the fire beneath the bones of mountains, the oldest motion of all. While the surface races through storms and seasons, they keep their steady pace. They will still be flowing long after every wave has broken, after every shore has shifted. after the last traces of our lives are gone. They are the Earth's lullaby to itself, the soft murmur of a planet that has never stopped dreaming. Deep beneath the still black floor of the content reference SOE site, 0 index equals 0, the rivers of fire continue their slow, hidden journey. They will never see the sun. They will never break the surface as glowing lava or thunderous eruptions. Yet they are always there, breathing heat into the planet's bones. They are the secret rhythm beneath the crust, the soft heartbeat of stone. While the ocean above lies in silence and the world rushes through its bright days, these molten currents drift unseen, carrying the memory of the Earth's birth. They are not loud, but they are unending, and they are the reason the planet still moves, still breathes, still lives. To imagine them is to picture the world without its skin. The crust we walk on is only a thin shell, a few dozen kilometers thick, floating on a mantle that stretches nearly 3,000 kilometers down. Inside that mantle, the rock is solid yet soft, hot enough to creep like warm wax. It moves at the pace of fingernail growth, yet it carries whole continents on its back. Heat rises from it in long, slow loops, carrying melted rock toward the surface and pulling colder rock down to replace it. These loops are the Earth's hidden tides, unseen from above but powerful enough to shape mountains, oceans, and the drifting dance of continents. The rivers of fire are the invisible thread, as holding the surface world in place. Their journey begins when the content reference SOE site, 1 index equals 1, bends into the trench and sinks into the mantle in the quiet motion called content reference SOE site, 2 index equals 2. As the slab descends, the pressure crushes its minerals and forces out its trapped seawater. That water seeps upward into the hot mantle and melts it, forming streams of magma that rise like slow sparks. Some of that magma will stall and cool deep underground, becoming new crust. Some will reach the surface through volcanoes in the content reference SOE site, 3 index equals 3, building islands from the ashes of the drowned seafloor. In this way, the trench feeds fire even while it appears to be swallowing the world. It is not an ending place. It is part of a circle, turning death back into birth. The chemistry of these molten streams carries the signature of their origin. They are laced with water, carbon, sulfur, and chlorine from the ocean crust they once were. When they erupt at the surface, these gases escape into the air and sea, nourishing life in ways few notice. The water becomes clouds and rain, feeding rivers. The carbon becomes part of the air we breathe and the bodies we build. The sulfur seeds the oceans with nutrients, stirring plankton blooms that anchor the food web. Even the rocks that cool from their lava carry metals that will someday nourish forests, animals, and people. The deep fire does not only melt stone, it carries the ingredients of life from the hidden dark back to the sunlit world. Yet these rivers of fire are patient. They rise slowly, cooling and changing as they move, their crystals growing and dissolving in endless cycles. Sometimes they stall in magma chambers, resting for centuries while the crust above them shifts. Their heat seeps outward into the rock, driving hot fluids through cracks, weaving new veins of copper, gold, and rare minerals. When those rocks someday rise to the surface and erode, the metals will scatter into soils and streams, becoming part of our tools, our wires, our coins. We will hold them in our hands without knowing they were once molten shadows beneath the trench. The quiet fire leaves gifts no one sees until long after it has gone. Even when it never reaches the surface, this hidden heat changes everything above it. It drives the slow drift of the continents, the rising of mountains, the opening and closing of oceans. Without it, the crust would cool and lock, and the planet would fall silent. There would be no earthquakes, no volcanoes, no shifting shores. The air would grow heavy with carbon, the seas would stagnate, and life would wither. All the restless beauty of the surface, the winds, the rains, the forests and rivers and bright living things, depends on this unseen warmth. The world we know is only the thin, bright skin of a much deeper life, and that life glows in silence under the abyss. Sometimes the rivers of fire speak briefly, and the planet listens. When the stress in a sinking slab grows too great, it snaps and deep earthquakes bloom. The shockwaves ripple upward, stirring the dark water above. Sometimes the break opens a path for magma to rise, feeding distant volcanoes that erupt in sudden storms of ash and light. These moments seem violent to us, but to the Earth they are gentle adjustments, releases of tension that keep its crust from cracking apart. The deep fire is not reckless, it is careful. Even in its power, it is slow, patient, deliberate. It has had 4 billion years to learn how to hold the world together without tearing it. Around the trench, its presence blooms quietly in the content reference site. 4 index equals 4 that dot the seafloor like tiny chimneys. Here, superheated water carries metals and chemicals from the hot crust below. It gushes into the cold ocean and builds towers of black and white minerals, delicate as coral yet strong as stone. Around them, life gathers in impossible abundance. Tubeworms glowing with red blood, pale crabs wandering through clouds of steam, shrimp with light-sensing organs on their backs. These creatures do not depend on sunlight. They live on the energy of the deep fire, feeding on chemical reactions stirred by heat. They are living proof that warmth can cradle life even in the coldest darkness, that fire and water can conspire to make something new. They are the trench's secret gardens, tended by invisible flames. The strangest thing about these rivers is how gentle they are. They hold unimaginable energy, enough to melt rock, to raise mountains, to shift oceans, yet they move with the softness of breath. They do not rage or blaze. They flow like thoughts through stone, reshaping the world one quiet moment at a time. Their power lies not in speed or noise, but in persistence. They never stop. While waves crash and winds scream and storms rise and fade, the rivers of fire continue their silent work. They are the opposite of storms. They are the planet's stillness moving. To think of them is to feel small, but also safe. The ground beneath our feet seems solid because they are there, keeping the crust warm and alive. The continents drift because they are pushing. The volcanoes rise because they are feeding them. The oceans exist because they keep recycling the seafloor. Our world is fragile, yet it floats on something ancient and enduring. The deep fire will outlast every city, every mountain, every memory. Long after we are gone, it will still be flowing, carrying the planet's heat through the dark. It is the oldest motion we will ever know, and it does not need to be seen to be real. As we rise in imagination from the trench, leaving its black silence behind, it is strange to realize how much depends on what we can never touch. The waves shimmer, the sunlight scatters across the surface, the air tastes cool and bright. Yet beneath it all, miles below, the planet's quiet heart is still burning, still shaping the world in patience. These rivers of fire are not ours, yet they hold us. They are the reason there is land to stand on, air to breathe, life to live. They are the Earth's first memory and its last promise, that even when everything seems still, something is always moving, always warming, always beginning again. Far below the last threads of sunlight, deeper than any shadow on the surface has ever fallen, there is a place where light forgets to follow. It is not night, for night implies the return of day. It is not shadow, for shadows are only interruptions of brightness. This is something else entirely. It is a darkness so complete that it has no edges, no boundaries, no hint of the world above. This is the realm at the bottom of the content reference site, 1 index equals 1, where light has never lived. The water here is ancient black glass, and the darkness is not an absence but a presence, heavy and endless, pressing gently from all sides. To descend into this world is to watch color die. At first, sunlight fades from gold to green to deep cobalt blue, then even blue vanishes and the water becomes ink. Sight begins to fail because sight was made for light and here there is none. Shapes lose their edges. Motion becomes suggestion, the eyes strain and then surrender. It is not simply that the world cannot be seen, it is that it stops needing to be seen. In this dark, vision becomes irrelevant and life has learned to live without it. The trench is not a place that hides from light, it is a place that has never known it. At these depths, the pressure is immense, over 1,000 times the weight of the air above the surface. The cold is nearly absolute, just above freezing. In this stillness, life has evolved along a different path, one that does not depend on light for energy or for meaning. The creatures that drift through this dark are shaped for invisibility. Many are transparent, their bodies like glass threads carrying faint glimmers of their organs within. Others are blacker than ink, absorbing what little stray light might wander from a submersible's lamps. Some have no eyes at all, their sight lost over countless generations as it became useless here. They move by touch, by pressure, by sensing vibrations in the water, like reading the shape of silence. The darkness has not erased life, it has refined it. The content referenceoicite 2 index equals 2 glides across the silt with soft translucent fins, its bones dissolved to cartilage, its body more water than flesh. Amphipods scuttle like glass ghosts over the sediment, their shells thin and pale, their movements sharp yet soundless. Strange holothurians, sea cucumbers with bodies like drifting silk ribbons, float just above the floor, sifting flakes of content referenceoicite 3 index equals 3 from the black. Each of these beings has abandoned speed and brightness for quiet and patience. They move slowly, carefully, conserving energy in a world where food comes like rare dreams. In their stillness is a kind of grace. They are not surviving despite the darkness. They are surviving because of it. Here where light has no meaning, life has found its own glow. Content referenceoicite 4 index equals 4 flickers like secret starlight across the trench. Tiny plankton spark when disturbed, leaving brief trails of blue. Jellyfish drift like lanterns, their bells pulsing with slow ripples of silver light. Anglerfish hang in the blackness with glowing lures bobbing gently from their foreheads, miniature suns to draw prey near. These glows are not decoration, they are language. They flash warnings, offer lures, send silent signals through the endless dark. Each pulse is a word in the deep secret conversation, spoken softly, vanishing quickly, leaving the dark unchanged. The trench is not truly dark. It is full of small, fleeting stars. Even the water here has changed to suit the dark. It is denser than surface water, its molecules pressed closer by the weight above. It holds sound longer, carries vibrations farther and muffle. Them more gently. A single click can echo for kilometers, softened and stretched into something like a sigh. This makes the trench strangely quiet even when it is not silent. Sound does not vanish, but it dissolves, becoming part of the background hush. To listen here is to hear almost nothing, just the faint groan of distant rock, the slow heartbeat of your own blood. It is a place where the world has turned its volume down to almost zero, as if to let the darkness speak. The absence of light has changed time itself. Without day or night, without dawn to divide the hours, time loses its edges. The creatures of this place do not measure their lives in days. They live in cycles of feeding and resting, of drifting and waiting. Their metabolisms are slow, their hearts beating only a few times a minute. Some live for decades without ever seeing the surface, their lives stretched thin and quiet across the centuries. Down here, a shadow on the silt can remain for years. Nothing hurries. The darkness has taught everything to be patient. It has taught the deep to breathe in long, slow sighs. Even the land beneath the dark has been shaped by its stillness. The trench floor is a plain of fine gray silt, soft as flour, undisturbed for centuries at a time. It lies so still that any disturbance, a fin stroke, a dropped instrument, can leave a mark that lingers for decades. Beneath the silt are the fractured peaks of drowned mountains, broken and folded by the slow bending of the content referenceoicite 5 index equals 5, beneath the content referenceoicite 6 index equals 6. These bones of stone lie hidden, cradled in darkness, their sharp edges softened by time. They are never seen, yet they hold up the water above them like the ribs of a sleeping giant. The darkness does not reveal them, but it remembers them. To be in this place, even in imagination, is to feel the surface world slip away. The urgency, the brightness, the noise all seem distant, like echoes from another planet. Here there is only stillness and slow movement, only the patient drift of life that has forgotten what light is. It does not feel dead, it feels eternal. It feels like the world before beginnings, the world before memory, the quiet from which everything once rose. The trench is not empty, it is complete. It is the pause between heartbeats, stretched into forever, holding the planet gently in its arms of black water. This is where light forgets to follow, and where life remembers how to endure. Darkness in the content referenceoicite 0 index equals 0 is not just the absence of light. It is a substance, thick and soft, as though the ocean has become a slow-moving night. It wraps around everything, pressing close, muting shape and distance. The eye cannot pierce it, but the body can feel it, a hush so complete it seems to soak into the bones. This darkness has ruled these depths for millions of years, long before any living thing knew how to see. It has become the architect of life here, sculpting every creature into forms that can endure what light could never reach. In its quiet weight, it has erased the need for eyes, for color, for speed. It has left only patience, transparency, and silence. Many of the creatures that drift here have abandoned sight entirely. Eyes are fragile and costly, and in this endless black they are useless. The content referenceoe site, 1 index equals 1, has tiny eyes that see almost nothing. It moves by feeling changes in pressure, sensing the faint vibrations of nearby motion like whispers in water. Some worms and crustaceans are completely blind, their faces smooth and pale as moonstone. Instead of sight, they carry delicate hairs along their bodies to detect currents, like fingertips stretched into the water. Others sense faint electric fields, mapping the invisible presence of life around them. In the dark, touch has become their vision and silence their language. Where vision has faded, light has been reborn as something internal. Content referenceoe site, 2 index equals 2, is the dark's quiet substitute for sunlight, a soft and private glow that blooms only when needed. Tiny plankton spark like drifting snowflakes. Shrimp flash bursts of blue to startle predators, then vanish. The content referenceoe site, 3 index equals 3, dangles a glowing lure from its head like a fallen star, waving it gently to call prey near. Some creatures glow steadily, others save their light for sudden flares, a flash and then nothing. This light is not for beauty. It is for survival, for hunting, for hiding, for finding mates in the endless black. The trench is filled with these small, fleeting stars, their glimmers rising and fading like breaths. In this world without sunlight, energy comes from elsewhere. Life here lives on the slow rain of content referenceoe site, 4 index equals 4, the endless drift of dead plankton, fish scales, and fragments of life from the bright world above. It takes months or even years for a single particle to fall from the surface to the trench floor. When it arrives, it is treasure. Amphipods scurry from the silt to snatch it, shredding it to feed themselves and the waiting microbes. Sometimes something larger falls, a squid, a shark, a whale. These rare gifts become islands of life, their bodies slowly dismantled by scavengers over decades. The trench survives on these echoes, living on memories of light that it has never seen. Some creatures bypass this slow chain entirely by drawing energy from the planet itself. In cracks on the trench floor, where the sinking content referenceoe site, 5 index equals 5, grinds beneath the content referenceoe site, 6 index equals 6, heat seeps upward from hidden magma. Superheated water gushes from content referenceoe site, 7 index equals 7, carrying dissolved metals and chemicals. Around these vents bloom colonies of pale crabs, red-tubed worms, and ghostly shrimp. They do not eat sunlight-borne food. They live on the energy of chemical reactions, feeding on bacteria that turn hydrogen sulfide and methane into life. It is as if the trench has made its own sun from stone. Even in total darkness, the earth keeps a quiet promise. Where there is warmth, there can be life. Time here has grown as soft as the dark. With no day or night to measure, the creatures of the trench live by rhythms so slow they seem almost still. Their hearts beat faintly. Their metabolisms drift like low flames, using only what they must. A single meal can last weeks. Some may live for decades, their lives stretched thin across centuries of darkness. Even death moves slowly. When a creature dies, its body drifts gently to the floor and rests untouched for months before the amphipods and microbes find it. The trench has no hurry. It carries everything at the pace of eternity, unbothered by the world's clocks. Time does not vanish here. It simply forgets to move quickly. The water itself holds this slowness. It is dense and cold, so heavy that it resists motion. There are no tides here, no current strong enough to stir the silt. The particles of dust and bone that fall from above settle softly and stay where they land, building quiet layers of history. Each flake is a tiny memorial, a record of a life once bright in the sunlit world. Over millions of years, these layers grow thick, pressing down the bones of drowned mountains, folding them deeper into the crust. The trench keeps these memories gently, never erasing, never rushing. It is the Earth's still library, each page written in silence. The absence of light has even changed the way sound behaves. In the cold, heavy water, sound travels farther and more slowly. A click can echo for miles, softened and stretched into something mournful. But because so few creatures make sound, the trench is almost silent. There are no songs here, no calls or cries, only the occasional groan of shifting rock far below. The silence is complete enough to feel physical, as if it presses gently against your skin. It is not an empty silence, but a full one, like velvet, like the weight of sleep. It carries a strange comfort, the sense that the world has paused to rest. Even the land beneath the dark has been softened by it. The trench floor is not jagged but smooth, the peaks of drowned mountains buried under centuries of falling silt. Landslides come rarely, and when they do, they move like slow avalanches, clouds of dust drifting for months before settling. Between them are valleys where nothing stirs, where a mark in the silt may last longer than human history. This stillness feels eternal, as if the planet has hidden its heart here, letting it beat only rarely, only gently. The darkness has turned the sharpest edges of the world into something almost tender. And yet, despite its stillness, this place is not lifeless. It is quietly full. Every shadow hides movement, the slow flex of a holothurian's ribbon body, the drifting arc of a transparent snailfish, the sudden flicker of an amphipod vanishing into the silt. They do not rush because nothing here rushes. They simply are small and patient and enduring. They show that life does not need light to be luminous or noise to be real. It needs only space to exist and time enough to keep breathing. The darkness has given them both. In this world where light forgets to follow, life has learned to bloom in silence. To drift through this blackness is to feel the world as it might have been before beginnings, just water, rock, and quiet motion. There is no horizon, no sense of up or down, only the soft pressure of water and the faint pulse of your own blood. The trench does not care who watches. It does not care if it is seen. It simply continues, holding its darkness like a secret too old for words. And yet in that darkness, life glows, breathes, and moves. It is not a void. It is a cradle, rocking gently at the bottom of the world, where light has forgotten to follow, but life has quietly remained. In the black silence at the bottom of the content reference soisai, T1 index equals 1, light is not missed. It is simply absent, like a word that was never written. The creatures here do not wait for it or mourn it. They have grown without it, shaped by darkness as trees are shaped by wind. Their bodies carry no longing for the sun. Their eyes are small or gone, their skins pale or transparent, their motions slow as dreams. They have learned that light is not necessary for life. Warmth is not necessary. Even speed is not necessary. Only persistence, only softness, only the steady refusal to stop. In this place where light forgets to follow, existence itself has grown quiet and sure. The darkness has become their shelter. It hides them from predators, from each other, even from time. It is their camouflage, their armor, their world. The content reference soisite, 2 index equals 2 glides across the silt unseen, its gelatinous body yielding to the weight of the ocean. Amphipods scurry like fragments of glass, vanishing as quickly as they appear. Jellyfish drift like small living moons, their faint blue glows fading the instant they are seen. None of them fight the darkness. They wear it like skin. It has erased all urgency from their lives. They are not in competition. They are in balance, moving only when they must, as though every motion must be earned from the silence. Even the rare glimmers of content reference soisite, 3 index equals 3, here seem shaped by the dark's patience. No creature shines constantly. Light appears only as brief whispers, a slow flash to startle an enemy, a pale lure to guide a mate, a shimmering pulse to draw prey close. These lights bloom like thoughts and then fade, leaving no trace behind. They are as soft as breathing, as fleeting as sighs. The trench does not allow brightness to linger. It teaches light to be humble, to come gently and then go. In this way, the darkness has tamed even fire, turning it into something delicate enough to survive here. The water carries this quietness deeper still. It is dense and cold, heavy enough to press sound flat. What little noise exists is softened until it feels like memory. A click from a distant crustacean travels for kilometers but arrives as a faint sigh. The shifting of rocks deep below becomes a slow groan, blurred by distance and cold. Even the hum of a submersible fades quickly, as though the dark itself is absorbing it. There is no echo here, no clamor, only the thick hush of eternity. It is the closest thing to silence the earth can make, and it lies like velvet over everything. The darkness also carries the weight of time. Without day or night, time has loosened its grip. There are no hours here, only ages. The silt on the trench floor is built from centuries of falling dust, plankton shells, fish bones, volcanic ash, even the faint soot of meteor strikes. Each grain took years to drift down. Each has rested for millennia. Together they have buried mountains, softened cliffs, filled valleys. The darkness keeps them undisturbed, layering memory upon memory. It has turned the floor of the trench into a slow archive of the planet, a book written so gently that even the turning of a page would be too fast. Above this silent library, the creatures move as if they are part of time's fabric, not separate from it. Their metabolisms burn like embers, their lives stretched across decades. A snailfish may live longer than entire human generations, floating unseen in the black. Amphipods may scuttle for centuries, their tiny jaws recycling the remains of things that lived in sunlight. When they die, their bodies drift down and vanish into the silt, becoming part of the soft record below. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is erased. The darkness folds every life into itself, holding it gently, keeping it safe from haste and forgetting. In this way, the trench has become more than a place. It is the planet's memory, a place where the surface world dissolves into stillness and is kept. It remembers not in words but in particles, not in stories but in layers. It remembers ancient plankton blooms, volcanic eruptions, the slow drift of continents, even the soot of human industry falling like distant snow. It remembers without judgment, without hurry. Everything is stored here, hidden but not lost, like treasures kept in the deepest chamber of a sleeping mind. The darkness is not empty. It is full of memory too quiet for the surface to hear. To imagine standing here, even in thought, is to feel the boundaries of the self blur. The body becomes just another shadow, the mind just another ripple in the water. The surface world, its brightness, its noise, its urgency, seems impossibly far away, like a dream half forgotten on waking. There is no ambition here, no race, no need to become. There is only being. The darkness accepts everything as it is. It does not ask for change. It does not demand light. It simply holds. And in that holding, everything endures. This is not death. It is continuity, drawn out until it feels like eternity. Perhaps that is the trench's final secret. That darkness is not the enemy of life, but its oldest companion. Long before sunlight reached the surface of the planet, before eyes opened or leaves unfurled or birds learned to rise, there was darkness and there was life. The first cells grew in it, fed by the heat of the earth rather than the light of the sky. The trench has kept that beginning alive. It is the planet's memory of how life began, not in brilliance but in silence, not in speed but in patience. It shows that life does not need to shine to exist. It only needs to continue. As we rise from this place in imagination, ascending through miles of black water, light slowly returns. First as a faint gray, then blue, then a sudden burst of gold as the surface breaks open above. The ocean glitters, the wind stirs, the world becomes loud again, yet something of the darkness lingers. It clings to the edges of thought, cool and soft, like the shadow of sleep. It whispers that beneath all the light and noise, the planet is still wrapped in quiet. It reminds us that the world does not need our brightness to endure. It will go on in silence, as it has for ages, carrying its dark heart gently inside. And so, where light forgets to follow, life still remembers how to be. It glows softly when it must. It rests when it can. It endures without rushing, without fear. It does not reach upward, it simply remains. The trench keeps it safe, cradled in darkness, hidden from time's hunger. It will still be here long after the last light fades from the surface, long after the last voice falls silent. It will wait in its black stillness, holding the memory of everything the world has ever been. The darkness is not an end. It is a beginning too quiet for light to notice.